I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 234. And today in the show, we are back again with our Rut Radio mini-series in which we are getting our weekly from the field reports on the latest in deer activity, behavior, current conditions, and the tactics that are working right now. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast brought to you by Onyx, and we're back again for another week of our Rut Radio mini-series. With me to help do that is Spencer Newharth. Spencer, have you killed Lieutenant Dan yet?
I have not, but that would be from a lack of effort.
What are you doing with your time?
I am saving up my time until November, basically. Like you have vacation days at work and like you have vacation days with your wife, kind of. I'm not going to burn all of those wife vacation days in mid-September when it's 94 degrees. So,
fair enough.
I am, stockpiling them until we hit November.
Well, I see your logic, so I'm going to give you a fair pass. I'm going to give you a free pass on that. But yeah, I'm a little jealous that you can be whitetail hunting though, because I'm home in Michigan and our whitetail season is like 2 weeks out still. So I kind of went from being able to hunt, now I'm back in this like purgatory where I'm stuck waiting, but I've already kind of got started, so I've got like the fever, now I'm just struggling. So I'm ready to get going again, and there's a lot of folks though that have been hunting, huh? The season's opening in where? Wisconsin, Minnesota, Missouri, all over the place, right?
Yeah, and then some localized openings in some southern states as well. So it's getting to that point within these next few weeks. We should see like all the whitetail states open up.
Yeah. So who then do you have on the show for us today talking?
We start off with Tony Peterson from Bowhunter Magazine in Minnesota. Then we talk to TJ Unger in Montana from the Virtue TV. Then we go to New Jersey and we have Patrick Cutter from Red Hand Outdoors. And then we talk to Michael Hunsucker in Missouri from Heartland Bowhunter.
Excellent. Do we have any kind of consensus? Or it seems like from what I've been hearing, it's been kind of hot and slow, at least around the places I've been talking to. Is that what we're hearing across the board?
Yeah, that hits the nail on the head when you say warm weather and lack of movement. We're also getting a lot of acorns dropping around the country. That's kind of started recently, and people talk about them literally raining down from gusts of wind. So I think that's going to be another big theme in 2018. Last year in the episode in January where we kind of wrapped up the season, we hit on some of the talking points of Rut Radio. That was one of them on almost every episode, and it sounds like a lot of states are dealing with big acorn crops again. So I have a feeling that's something we're going to hear about a lot over this next month. And I think this next month is also kind of the most exciting time of Rut Radio. It's sort of the most nuanced hunting for whitetail archery guys. It's not like it was, for the last 2 weeks where you're catching deer on summer patterns and finding bachelor groups and stuff like that. And it's not like what it will be in November either, when the rut kind of trumps all. This next month or so is when you really have to work for those deer. So I think these are going to be some of our best episodes of Rut Radio. And like last season, when we would hit October, you talk to some people in the very same episode, you'd hear movement that was a 2 out of 10 for them. And then someone else just a couple states away felt like they were experiencing like a 9 out of 10. So it'll be some unique hunts and unique reports going all the way through the end of October.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up last year's episodes and those interviews throughout the year. And I was just thinking the other night, I was actually laying in bed, thinking about all sorts of stuff. And I thought to myself that it would be a good idea to go back and listen to all of last year's, or maybe even the year before, all of those Rut Radio episodes, because I think you can start to notice trends or different correlations and then look for those things in the future and apply what we learned from those guys. So, for example, if you've got a hunt at the beginning of October, go back and listen to those episodes around that time frame last year and around that time frame the year before, and you're going to hear from Joe Blow in Missouri, and you're going to hear from Ben in Michigan, and you're going to hear from Steve in Georgia, and they're going to talk about, well, we had this condition coming in, we had this front coming in, we had this thing happening, and this is what we saw, or this is how I worked on it, or this is what I tried to do because of that. And I'm betting that there'll be things you hear about from those past years that would be applicable to what you have coming up. So I think even though it's, speaking to specific things happening in the year 2016 and the year 2017, right, there's these patterns that repeat every year where this front moved in on October 1st and this is what happened, and 4 guys saw similar things. So that this year, if a similar front rolls in at the same kind of time frame, or if the similar situation with the hard mass crop or something, you can apply that to what's coming up. At least that, in my head, I was thinking that might be helpful even for me. Since I haven't heard those in so long, I'm thinking that I might do that on my upcoming drive home from Montana. I might go binge listen Rut Radio episodes and see if I can't pick something new out of that.
Yeah, and a good example of that is this week we're talking to Mike Hunsucker in Missouri. Well, last year in Missouri, he tagged a really big buck at the end of September. And I asked him in our interview, I said, is there anything that you can take away from last year's hunt and apply to 2018? And he said, yeah, there's a cold front that is timed very similar from this year to last year. And that's when it's going to be his first hunt of the year coming up here at the end of the week. So
yeah,
just like you said, there are things from years past that you can apply to this year. And going back and touching on like that acorn crop thing, Tony had told me off air that a good indicator in Minnesota for them regarding like the mass crop available is the number of the number of bear harvested. And this season, they're down 30% right now, and that would be due to many of the bear killed in Minnesota are killed on bait piles. But if there are a bunch of acorns and other natural food sources available, those hunters can't find those bear on the bait piles because they have no reason to come into them. And bear and deer largely eat the same things. And so with that harvest being way down this year, that's a good indicator that these deer have a lot of food sources available as well. So those northern states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, it's something you're probably going to be battling, all season this year.
When I was out in late August doing some work, just loaded, the oaks are just loaded with acorns and dropping them, and I can see where on some of my trail cameras that I've got some cameras pointing out into a food plot, but then there's also oaks on the back side of the food plot. And in one of these cameras specifically that I checked a couple weeks ago, I had it pointed at the plot. These deer were coming through. It didn't even seem like they were stopping in the food plot at all. They were heading right to that oak tree, and then there would be 5-6 deer all right underneath that oak, eating the acorns, not touching the plots. So I think that if you're trying to focus on a green food source or some little food plot or something here in the next few weeks or early October, to your point, Spencer, you might not see the number of deer you would hope because they're going to be back in that timber. So I'll be interested to hear what everybody has to say, and especially in the coming weeks, once I start hunting in October, I know it's going to impact me because I have some spots set up for the early season trying to get them on these little food sources, but it's probably not going to work out. I think it's either you're going to have to wait or you're going to have to dive in there if you've got a safe way to hunt into that timber when they're on those oaks. That's going to change things up for people.
One final thing regarding food sources that I want to touch on and plug a little bit is on my blog, Rut Fresh, I just wrote about whether or not it's true that deer won't eat yellow soybeans. I think that's something we've heard a ton of people say, and you talk to hunters and they say, oh, not seeing much right now, the beans are turning. But I think that there's a lot of misconceptions around that statement that deer won't eat yellow soybeans. So go check out Rut Fresh. You'll find that as the latest blog where I kind of talk about what I think is actually going on there with the phenomenon that people think that deer will hammer soybeans when they're green or brown, but not yellow. And with that, I think we go into the episode and get to our first caller, Tony.
Sounds good.
Before we get to our first update, let's pause for a word from our sponsors at Whitetail Properties. This week with Whitetail Properties, we are joined by Tony Hansen, a land specialist out of Michigan. And Tony is going to be telling us about what factors matter most on a property in high-pressure areas.
Well, to me, it's variety. So even though I own and kind of hunt a lot of small properties, you got to look for a mix of things. You need food for sure, but you need cover probably even more. So, I need to have all of the pieces that the deer needs because I don't want them traveling very far, and I don't want them to feel like they have to travel very far. Because especially during our gun season when there's nearly 1 million guys out there, if a deer moves, it's got a real good chance of getting shot. So I try to find properties that have everything you need right there. And yes, neighborhood matters, but it doesn't matter quite as much as what you can, do right there on your own property. So you want to make sure that you have food and cover and, bedding areas, security places, and sanctuaries are a big thing with me too. So I look for a lot of variety in the property.
If you'd like to learn more and to see the properties that Tony currently has listed for sale, visit whitetailproperties.com/Hansen. That's Hansen. All right, and joining us on the line first is Tony Peterson from Bowhunter Magazine in Minnesota. Now, Tony, in Minnesota, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say, we're probably sitting at about a 5. I'd say we're right in the middle right now. It's been real hot. We got a cold front coming in that'll help, but right around the opener, there's always some movement you can find if you know where to sit, and even if it's hot like it's been, you can find something, a real green field or a little water source to sit over where you'll see some bucks if you're doing it right.
Well, in Tony Peterson fashion, you filled your tag in Minnesota very quickly. Tell us a little bit about that hunt and a little bit about that setup.
Opening night, it was 88 degrees when I got out of the truck, and I intended to go sit a little staging area and play off some acorns as deer moved down to the fields. But on the way in, I had a different stand that I had to walk past, and it was on this alfalfa field, that I put up for a gimme, hoping I can kill one early season. And there's so much deer sign getting in there that I was like, I don't really think I should be walking past this stand. And it was hot. I knew the wind was right, and I knew there would be some deer coming into that green field, that alfalfa field. And so I sat up there and had a couple bucks and some does come out, and the biggest buck in the group offered me a shot, and I was out, at 7:00 at night on opening night. So that's how that shook out.
Well, that was a well-executed hunt, Tony. I assumed you would get it done opening weekend, and you did. So tell us a little bit more about the food sources in Minnesota right now. What are those whitetail focusing on here in mid-September?
In Minnesota, it's like a lot of places, a lot of states around here right now, there's an abundance of food. And, if you could get on the right apple tree or the right white oak, you'd probably be on fire. But generally, when it's this hot, I like something green. If I'm not hunting water, I like alfalfa or something nice. If you could get like maybe a late planted soybean field where they're still eating some of the leaves, that can be a good thing. But just something nice and green that isn't dried out, because they're looking for some moisture. That's my fishing anyway.
It seemed like most of the country had a large mass crop last year. Did Minnesota have that as well, with plenty of acorns on the ground?
Sure, they did. And it changes every year, it feels like, but last year felt like we had a lot of acorns, and this year we definitely have a ton of acorns.
So how do you think that will affect things going into the end of September and the beginning of October for deer movement?
I think you'll be dealing with some staging area stuff. The way that the acorns set up in a lot of places, or the oak trees, I should say, is, if as there's fewer sources out there, they become even more important, and they can get a lot of good nutrition feeding under one tree. And so it's kind of a deal where you might not kill that field edge buck in a couple weeks because it's, there's been a lot of pressure already, or whatever your specific situation is. But if you can find those acorns where they're hitting them right now, if you can get in and scout right now and hang and hunt, or for the next 2 weeks or so, that's going to be important. Those acorns definitely will play into most strategies, I would think.
And do you think that abundance of acorns would make it easier or harder to kill an early season buck in the morning?
I don't know if it makes it any easier. I don't like when they have lots and lots of options. I would rather have them only have a couple trees that they could go hit. But it's just all about your specific situation. If you can get in and find the one that they're hitting, and it's not going to be, run a trail camera, because by the time you're running a camera and checking the pictures and seeing what's going on, that might be over. It's going to be, hike in with a stand on your back, or going in a nice little rain shower and take a look around at where they're feeding. Because it's pretty obvious when you find a tree that they're pounding, or a set of trees that they're pounding. And so it's going to be kind of an, in the moment type of hunt.
Well, you were headed to Wisconsin here at the end of the week. What are you going to be focusing on then?
I'm gonna be hunting some public land it's big wood stuff. But the place I'm most curious about hunting has a soybean field kind of close to it. That's a private field, but I think I can catch them coming and going. And I do have one ridge scouted out that's got some oak trees on it in a specific spot. So when I get over there, I'm gonna go take a look at the sign and just kind of make my decision then, see where I think I should be.
Going forward then this next week or so, what do you think that buck activity is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10 in Minnesota?
I would say we could get to about a 7. That cold front coming in should crank things up a little bit and get some earlier movement in the evenings. And I think it's going to get better. All
right, Tony. Well, good luck on the rest of your public land adventures, and thanks for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, and joining us on the line next is TJ Unger from the Virtue TV in Montana. Now, TJ, in Montana, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
Hey, Spencer. So this is day 3 for us out here at Powder River Outfitters in Montana. So we've had a few good sits. Concentration so far as deer numbers are very, very high, but so far as buck activity, I would give it a 5 out of 10 right now. We can talk about the variables to, why we think that is, but current situation that we've seen over the last couple of days, probably a 5 out of 10.
And so what are some of those variables? Is it the weather, some of the food sources? What do you think is providing that mediocre deer movement right now?
Yeah, so, there's plenty of food out here. There's alfalfa all over the stretch of the majority of the land that we're hunting, but we're hitting some pretty dry times, and with those dry times, it's pretty unseasonably warm. So just like anywhere else in the country, I personally think that the number one variable to stop, mature deer movement is heat. So when it's hot, they're just bedding down. At the same time, we've had a couple of encounters. Each one of the groups out here has at least, seen a good shooter on each sit, but just numbers, we're not seeing the numbers that we typically would at a place like Powder River. But those hot temps should come to a pretty solid standstill. And like I said, we're seeing a lot of deer activity. I think on our first sit, Brady and I saw, roughly 70 deer, but they're all, pretty immature. We're talking does and fawns, yearling bucks, and maybe some 2-year-old bucks. So activity overall is really, really high, but we're in a very game-rich environment. I don't think that there's been a day that's gone by where somebody didn't see, 20, 30 deer. So each of our sits, we're seeing, high numbers. but just not yielding those mature animals like it normally would. So we do have some weather changes coming in. Actually, tonight we're supposed to get a front moving in and change things up. They haven't seen rain out here in Broadus, Montana in over 3 weeks. So like I said, very dry conditions. Deer are sitting tight, at least the mature animals. They're heading to water and to those food sources after dark. It makes sense. It's the same thing that any of us would do when it's super hot. We're staying in the air conditioning and moving out to that water hole, after the sunset.
Now, as you would on, say, one of your Midwest properties, you're kind of hunting from bed to food, but how is it different in eastern Montana than, say, it would be in Indiana?
Yeah, so it's different very significantly out here. So we primarily are hunting the Midwest. This is the first opportunity I've had to come out here to Powder River. Our group has hunted out here for several years, but, right off the bat, it's a clear difference. We're hunting farms or ranches that are made up of, 10 sections plus. So a minimum of like 6,000 acres on each of these ranches that we're setting stands on. So, and of those, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres of alfalfa. Whereas in, the Midwest and in Indiana where we're at, we're hunting, maybe a couple hundred acre piece, made up of corn and beans. So, at home, we're focusing on travel corridors and travel routes this time of year. They're stripping velvet at home pretty steadily. So, we're still looking at those long stretches where they're coming out of the heavy timber, going through staging areas and then into the ag fields. Whereas here it's pretty tight, from river, into that thick bedding. And then we're right on the edge of those alfalfa fields. So we are hunting that edge habitat that, that deer love, but, it's a much tighter span between bedding to their food source. So because of that, coupled with the conditions that we have right now, Brady and I are hunting afternoons only. The morning sits, it's a little too risky. If we were trying to slip in there, they'd still be on that alfalfa, and we would risk blowing all those deer out of the country. So afternoon sits for us. But like I said, that weather pattern should change pretty significantly over the next couple of days. We're seeing some colder temps. I think low in the 40s. We've got about a 180 change in wind direction. So, over the last couple of days, Brady and I both, we've been climbing into these stands and hunting as marginal as a marginal wind can be. Our first set, we had a really good buck come out, about maybe 20 minutes before last light or before legal light was over. But, just caught enough of our wind to turn around and head back to bedding until it was safe to come back out. So, we'll see. I expect things to continue to improve. Like I said, everyone in camp has had some good encounters, and numbers are still very, very high on immatures. So I'm hoping that this change should bring those more mature animals out a little bit earlier.
Are you finding a lot of bucks are traveling on their own at this point, or are they still hung up in those bachelor groups?
Yeah, funny thing, so all the animals that we're seeing right now are hard horns. They've already stripped velvet. Montana legalized trail cameras for this year, so Powder River has been running some trail cameras as well, and everything that we're seeing is hard horned. Some very young, very, very immature, like spikes are holding velvet, but that's to be expected. With that, though, we are still seeing bachelor groups. All of the bucks that Brady and I have seen, they've all been with other bucks. Last evening, one of our guys, Clint Schwach, who I'm sure you guys are familiar with, Clint had a great set on the river. So, again, with these dry, hot conditions, they're using these water sources. And just like anywhere else, I think that they tend to take ownership of, whether it's a bait site or a agriculture site in Midwest, whatever it is, they tend to take ownership of those spots. And last night, Clint's hunting over right on the Powder River, and I think a good buck showed his dominance in taking ownership of that water hole on the river. And Clint had a good 8-point step out and just act a little intimidated about something. And maybe 30 seconds later, then the mature buck popped out, all bristled up, just like he's ready to go, like we would expect to see. But funny enough, they're still grouped up out here in those bachelor bachelor pads. So.
Well, you sound optimistic. What do you think that buck movement's going to look like on a scale of 1 to 10 in this next week or so for Montana?
Well, we've been optimistic the whole time just because we're in Powder River. This is a world-renowned place for any whitetail hunter or any hunter for that matter. It's sportsman's paradise out here. Brady and I are absolutely having a blast every sit. I think combined over the last 3 sits, we've seen more out here in Broadus, Montana at Powder River than we did combined all, last season. So there's just high numbers, which keeps us happy and optimistic about what might pop out at any minute. But with these weather changes, I think we go from probably a 5 over the last few days to, I would expect things to bump up around 7 to 8 even, if the weather holds, if the forecast holds to what it is. We may get a little bit of moisture, but definitely a change in the wind and temps. So it might be that bump that we all like to see this time of year. So I say over the next few days, probably let's give it a strong 7.5. What do you think about that?
That sounds good. All right, TJ, well, good luck to you and the rest of the Virtue TV crew. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity. You guys have a great week and stay safe out there.
All right, and joining us on the line next is Pat Cutter from Red Hand Outdoor Company in New Jersey. Now, Pat, in New Jersey, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say if you're talking about the past couple of days, I would say it's more like a 4 or 5 out of 10. I would say last week, opening weekend was very good, probably like an 8 out of 10. But the past couple of days, it's slowed down a bit, pretty much due to the white oaks dropping. So.
Now, you guys have had some recent success at Red Hand Outdoor Company hunting in New Jersey on that opener. Tell us a little bit about those setups that you had.
Yes. My buddy Brian, he killed a 4.5-year-old on, I think it was September 10th, I believe. And he was hunting a suburban area, and it's legal to bait here. So he was running a bait on about a 6-acre piece all summer long, and he had 2 shooters on there, and one of them being this a split brow 8-pointer. So he made a perfect shot on that deer, and then the next night I was actually hunting about an hour away. I lease about a 300-acre ag farm. It's alfalfa and corn pretty much. And I have a number of shooters on that farm this year, and the one field I witnessed on Sunday night, 3 or 4 shooters come out on the north end of the field, and we got a south wind on Tuesday, so I was able to slip in there on that north end, get a stand in one of the cedar trees, and I was able to capitalize on a 45-yard shot on a 5-year-old that we know is lump face.
If you were still hunting right now, do you think those field edges would still be relevant for you on that farm?
No, I don't. My brother's actually on the lease as well, and the ag fields have pretty much dried up, and that's due to the white oaks are really heavily dropping right now. And he's hunted a couple times, and the deer activity has just gone straight downhill. He did hunt an oak. There's a cattle pasture leading into one of these alfalfa fields, and there's several big white oaks in there, and he did hunt out of one of those white oaks last night, and he saw, I think, 8 or 10 deer, no shooters, but they were feeding on the oaks heavy.
And when do you think that alfalfa field is going to be useful to hunt again? Do you think within a week or so, or might it be October before you're doing some setups there?
I would say from past experience, early October, they'll start to get pretty good again. You can still catch deer here and there on them, but oaks is where it's at right now.
And are you guys catching any weather from Florence now that it's made landfall or not?
Yes, we are. Actually, I'm sitting in the truck getting poured on right now. The storm actually looped up, and now we're catching the rains from it right now. It rained pretty heavy yesterday afternoon, and it should be lightening up this afternoon. So me and my brother are actually going out this afternoon. We got pictures on a cell cam last night of 2 shooters in another part of the farm in kind of like an oak bottom. So we're going to try to capitalize on that tonight.
Do you put any stock into what the moon might be doing? I know later this week We have a phase that some hunters are excited about, but how about you guys in New Jersey?
I do believe in it. This week we are approaching that full moon, and as you've heard probably Mark Jury say 100 times, that leading up to that full moon, it and enhances that feeding pattern, and I do agree with that. So if you're out there and you're on some hot white oaks, I think this week's a good time to get out there.
Going forward, then, this next week or so, what do you think that buck activity will be on a scale of 1 to 10 in New Jersey?
If you're on some good white oaks, I think the hunting could be probably a 6 or 7 out of 10. But if not, I think you're looking at more of a 4 out of 10. So it all depends if you're in the right spot, pretty much.
All right, Pat. Well, good luck the rest of the season, and congrats on that great buck that you and your buddy got. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Spencer. Appreciate it.
All right, and joining us on the line last is Mike Hunsucker from Heartland Bowhunter in Missouri. Now, Mike, in Missouri, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, I'd probably say, probably a 6 or 7. It hasn't been that great. The deer are still moving. They're just moving at very last light, it seems, because it's just been super, super hot.
What is your strategy then, mid-September like this, when it's super hot, if you were trying to get a mature buck on the ground?
I mean, this is actually one of my favorite times of year to hunt, and it doesn't have to be, perfect weather. The deer, have been doing the same thing all summer long. They're used to the heat too, so they're still moving. They're just not moving as early and as good as they would with a little front coming through. But I actually haven't been hunting yet here in Missouri. I've only been scouting the past couple nights, trying to make up for being gone and being in Montana for the first 2 weeks of September. So trying to put the legwork in now. But some of our guys that have been out hunting are seeing decent activity. I think the biggest factor right now for us is the acorns are starting to drop here in Missouri, and what typically would be a bean field with 30 to 40 deer in it every night is we're seeing 8 to 10 fewer deer, and they're just not keen on the beans as much. They're starting to turn as well, depending on when they got planted. The ones that got planted earlier in the year are starting to turn a little bit, and so that has a factor to as well. So.
Now, I know you mentioned you've been scouting these last couple evenings, but do you also have some value in trail cameras this time of year as well? Or if you're going to kill a buck, is it because you laid your own eyes on him?
Yeah, I mean, trail cameras obviously are extremely important, but this time of year it can be really tough to get them on camera. I mean, there's just a lot of food in a lot of places, and so, there's typical, we have these typical spots of, crossings and areas where we get pretty solid trail cam pictures year round. But when it comes to like the soybeans, the buck can come out into the field in so many different places and just feed out in the middle of the field. So it really can be a difficult time of year to get pictures of them. So I love being able to glass and being able to see the whole field and kind of sit back from afar and scout it out. And a lot of times, right now I'm doing that from the truck or from on foot, hiking up to a vantage point to where I can see that. But a lot of times I'll do it from a stand that may be a stand that, you're probably not going to kill anything out of, but, you get in there, set up with your bow, and you never know. But what's nice is you be far enough away to where you can kind of glass everything. And if, you don't see anything close, you can slip out early, undetected. So.
Now, last season you killed a big buck at the end of September. Is there anything from that hunt or in 2017 that you think you could apply to late September this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think I over the past 10 years or so, I mean, I've had a ton of success the first week or two of Missouri season, and it's one of my favorite times of the year to hunt because if you're targeting specific bucks, they don't get any more patternable. You're out there killing, any mature buck might be better during the rut, but if you're targeting one specific buck, there's no better time than this time of year. So last year, we just had really consistent weather the first 2 weeks of the season. It wasn't this hot as it is this year, but it was just solid, like mid 80s or 80s, I believe, all the first 2 weeks. And we finally got a cold front that pushed through. That was a big enough, system to make a difference. And that was the night I killed that buck. So that was the first real cold front of the year. This year, it looks like that's going to be coming for us here in Missouri Friday. So it's going to be coming in Thursday evening, I think, and Friday. So the highs go from the 90s to the 70s. So a 20 degree swing in temperature is a huge, huge difference. And I imagine a lot of deer will go down this weekend.
I know you guys do a great job of keeping tabs on all your deer, where they're bedding, where they're feeding, stuff like that. Do you notice any bedding changes from mid-September here, maybe till mid-October, something that'll make you guys change your strategy once the calendar turns?
Yeah, I think it kind of just depends on the deer. Actually, the particular deer that I'm trying to key on right now is a deer that he summers on our property every year, and then he leaves. And so I got pictures of him on September 12th, but I haven't seen him or got pictures of him since. And so I'm a little bit worried. I'm assuming he's gone, which is fine. But he's the buck that I'm really focused on now. But I do have another deer that I'm really anxious to see if he shows up, because he summers somewhere else and then shows up late September on our property. So the deer definitely shift. Once they start shedding their velvet, they definitely move and they get a little more territorial, and they change some of their habits. And it's interesting to see, monitoring trail cameras over the years, how consistent they are. I mean, I could tell you this buck's a 7-year-old buck, I believe. Maybe 6, I can't remember, 6 or 7, but he every single year, within a few days is when he leaves the property, and then when he shows back up, it's always within a few days. So it's amazing how they get in their habits and how their patterns change just like that every single year, almost exactly the same.
Going forward then in this next week or so, what do you think that buck activity will be on a scale of 1 to 10 in Missouri?
Man, it's going to be about as good as it gets, in my opinion. I think this weekend, I think you're going to see it up probably around a 9, I would guess. Friday through really, it warms back up a little bit early next week, and then another front is supposed to be coming through. So going to be some variable weather, which is good for activity. So I'm really looking forward to spending some time in the field this next week.
All right, Mike. Well, I like your confidence. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And that concludes this week's episode of Wired to Hunt's Rut Radio. A special thanks to Tony, TJ, Patrick, and Mike for joining me, and thank you guys for listening. As always, make sure you follow Wired to Hunt on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and follow Rut Fresh on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Good luck to everyone out there, and stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.